Good afternoon, everyone. Today at 3 p.m., this is our debate for the MUISS Secretary position. Our office bearer is currently Sharon Joe as the MUISS Secretary, and our candidates are Ayesha Suhaima Rab from Ignovitas and Mahasan Wirasinghe from Lideransia. Just a quick introduction. My name is Sean Pan. I'm the returning officer for this year's annual election, and my DRO or Deputy Returning Officer is Alethea Go, and she's working behind the scenes to make sure that the stream runs smoothly. Now, just a few reminders for the audience. Remember to keep your comments respectful, no hate speech or anything like that. And you can ask questions related to our candidates' manifestos in the comments below. And therefore, any questions that you have will be given the opportunity to be asked to our candidates, and I will let them answer your questions to better clarify their manifestos. Now, without further ado, let's move on to the agenda just so that everyone is clear about how things are going to work today. So, firstly, we have the introduction by the Election Commission, which is what I'm doing now. And after I talk about the itinerary, we will move on to the opening statements by Ayesha and Mahasan, where we are giving them a chance to talk about their manifestos and just overall make a good first impression. After this, Ayesha and Mahasan will be given 10 minutes to question each other based on each other's manifestos. Of course, things have to be kept respectful, so that's something they'll be keeping in mind. After the 10 minutes, we'll move on to Q&A by the office bearer Sharon Doe, and after Sharon's question and answer session, we will move on to the question and answer by the audience yourselves. After the audience's question and answer, which I will be presenting and I'll be reading your comments, we will move on to the closing statement by Mahasan and Ayesha, and finally, we will close off by Election Commission. So, without further ado, let's move on to the opening statements. Ayesha, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
All right, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayesha. I'm a second year second sem student in the School of Business, and I'm currently majoring in economics. If I am to be elected as a Secretary of MUISS, I plan to ensure efficient communication amongst all respective departments of MUISS, along with international students and secure deadlines through the usage of Google and Apple calendars. I would also hold timely annual general meetings where the meetings would be timed. I was a former subcommittee member of MUISS Welfare, where I have worked for 2 terms, and along with my personal managerial skills, I want to ensure effective yet effortless communication amongst MUISS and all international students in Monash, Malaysia. I aim to make MUISS more engageable and momentous for all international students. The reason I want to work with MUISS again is because it made me feel comfortable and acknowledged despite being far away from home, and enabled me to connect with people who come from different countries and backgrounds. I want to give back this experience to all international students in Monash, Malaysia. For my manifesto, I have emphasized on 3 points. Firstly, efficient communication amongst departments. I would use communication channels such as WhatsApp, Telegram, and Zoom for various planning purposes. I will emphasize on the usage of Telegram to differentiate between work and social life and pin important messages for making it easy to view key information. For internal communication, I would mainly use Telegram as most of our communication with friends and family is done through WhatsApp, for which many important messages tend to get lost or left unseen. But through the usage of Telegram, there is an option for pinning messages so that members would have easier access to key messages without the need to scroll through various texts. For external communication, I would do that through our MUISS Heads initiative of reigniting the MUISS website, where information about our events and initiatives is just a click away. We would also provide updates and information on our Instagram page where students could reach out to us through direct messages. Secondly, I would resolve conflicts. I would facilitate healthy discussions among departments to resolve conflicts, hear out both the opinions of both parties in a conflict, and try to give unbiased suggestions to establish a mutual ground. I would also arrange a meeting to make the parties talk and understand the reason for the disagreement. And if the matter needs further intervention, I would consult with the MUISS head. And lastly, I would encourage interdepartmental collaboration. I would try to create a collaborative atmosphere by initiating meetings amongst each MUISS departments to comprehend their progress and challenges, which will help foster a sense of cooperative responsibility amongst all members and build trust. To do this, I would encourage collaboration by ensuring that MUISS office bearers communicate their events and ideas with MUSA, which would reduce the barriers between MUSA and MUISS as we are at its core organization. By doing this will allow us to gather more ideas and inputs from other departments and ease the burden of the budget. I would also try to maintain a close relationship with the MUSA Secretary by increasing the frequency of meetings as well to enhance the functionality of MUISS and MUSA as a whole. That is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayesha, for your wonderful opening statement. Audience, that was Ayesha Suhaimara from Ignivitas with a contesting position for MUISS Secretary's opening speech. Now, it is time for Mahasan's opening statement. Mahasan, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Sean. Hi, everyone. I'm Mahasan from Sri Lanka, and I'm applying for the position of MUISS Secretary from the party Lideransa. And the main reason I chose to apply for this position of Secretary was because I believe I have ample experience to take on the role with prior experience of holding the position of Secretary in two different organizations. I also believe, as an international student who has not been a part of MUIS, would help me think in a perspective of an international student who is outside of MUIS and understand what is needed from the organization in terms of communication towards externalities, and will be able to serve better in terms of improving communication and provide a new perspective to the department. The main responsibilities of a secretary position in general is to maintain communication and resolve conflict. My main manifesto towards next year aim to improve internal and external communication along with efficient documentation, stable attendance keeping, and to reduce conflict. So, my first idea includes of proposing an appointment of a person from each department subcommittee by the heads of each department of MUIS to be in charge of communication and documentation of the each department. I believe this would increase efficient communication among each department and increase transparency among departments that would lead to more productivity. Moreover, this would also lessen the burden of documentation on each department head, allowing them to fulfill their role more efficiently. The main responsibilities of this proposed person will be to include documentation of events of each department, keep meeting minutes, and provide a summary of each department every week on main group of MUIS on a platform such as WhatsApp or in Telegram that we decide to use. Furthermore, I would like to propose maintaining a Google Calendar for MUIS that everyone in MUIS has access to and will be used to plan events and be used to inform the whole of MUIS of the dates of each event prior. This allows transparency among departments, which also would help reduce the amount of conflict due to proper communication and schedules ahead of time. My second idea includes an improvement to external communication, which I think includes students, which includes reducing communication channels among that international students have to go through in order to get an issue solved. This would be done by I'll be talking to media office of MUIS and trying to publicize the contacts of MUIS executive committees itself among the new and existing international students rather than students having to go through many channels and many people. This would increase the credibility of MUIS and also accessibility to the international students community. Finally, my third idea includes an efficient attendance system. So, for example, you all have seen the card read at Monash Library, right? So, similarly, I would like to propose such system to monitor attendance during physical meetings, events, and office hours of office bearers. This system will enable to have attendance in one place, which will ensure that it is stored methodically, which makes it more efficient and stable. So, this is the summary of my main ideas for next year. Feel free to ask any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahasan, also for that wonderful opening statement. Now, this will be our first debate where we have a cross examination between candidates. And candidates, this is your chance to question each other about each other's manifestos. So, without further ado, let's just get it right into it. Go ahead.
Can I go first? Okay. So, in your election guide, Mahasen, you have mentioned that you would introduce an automated attendance system where members could use their student ID to mark their attendance during meetings. How would that per se increase the attendance of ECs during meetings? And wouldn't you think that it's an inefficient use of MUSA's money instead of manually recording attendance through raise of hands, which have been proven to be effective so far?
Yeah, Okay, so I believe your question is that why it would increase the attendance of the executive committees. So I don't think it wouldn't increase attendance of executive committees, just that it improves the attendance system. So if you're the secretary, you have to go to you have to go to each meeting, but you have to manually put attendance, right? But if we can use a card reader system like what we use in the library, we can do it more efficiently, and all the attendance systems will be in one place. So for example, let's say a person comes to meeting, they can tap their student ID, and it'll mark their attendance with the arrival time, and also when they leave, they can tap the ID card where they can the closing time will also be submitted. So talking about budget, I would have to talk to the IT department for this. So I remember when this year started, there was a card reader at the gate of Monash, where it records attendance of students of coming to Monash. So I believe there are card readers that are not in use, like not in permanent use, which I could use. But so let's say there is a budget issue and we can't do it because this is not an important thing. I also propose each person coming into attendance and each person coming into meeting event or whatever to mark their attendance themselves. So, such as let's say office hours. So, for example, on Monday, as a secretary, I would I would send a message saying, okay, in a group which is the executive committees, when you go to the office and put your attendance in that message and to fill it out during the day. So I would keep reminding that so people won't forget. So that's what I would say. It wouldn't actually increase attendance. It's just a more efficient way and letting themselves present themselves. So,
Okay, thank you for your answer.
no worries. So I have a question about how you, in your election guide, as new ideas, you have proposed using of Telegram for poll keeping, right?
Yes.
So can you explain more about it? So how it's different to your idea of survey of having satisfactions, how it would improve like their satisfaction, or like how it would improve communication.
Are you talking about the polls in Telegram, or are you talking about the survey forms I will be
So
providing
that's
to the
both.
subcommittee members?
So that's
So
both,
you're
right?
talking, yeah.
I'm asking what's the most like best part about Telegram. So let's say you can use Google Forms, survey forms, like what you said, but also you have said Telegram. So personally, I
Yes.
haven't used Telegram, so I'm asking you how it works and how it will be very productive.
All right, thank you for your question. So, for Telegram, I'm going to use it to gather votes, correct? So, whenever we're planning for an event, I would require all the OBs to input their ideas and creativeness. So, creating polls and telegrams would allow us to choose between options and take votes of the majority. And as for the survey forms go, that would be provided to the subcommittee members where I could give it to them so that they could tell me how, if they're satisfied with their department and if there's room for improvement they would like to see. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Um, I had another question for you. So currently, there are multiple countries which have a vacant spot for country representatives. As mentioned in your manifesto, that international students would approach MUISS through their country representatives. So how would the students who do not happen to have a country representative get in touch with MUISS?
Okay. So yeah, I believe there are countries that have like a less amount of participation, and also they don't have country representatives. So during an orientation week, we tell international students, the MUIS tells the international students to, if they have any issue, they can email the MUIS MUSA email, or they can send a DM to Instagram. So I just would like to discuss this idea with the media officer, whoever gets selected, to publicize our personal contact information, like our phone numbers even. I think i think that would make the students more engaged. Also it will help with the communication because they can talk to the office bearers and like directly without going through so many people. Like even if they don't have a country representative, they can talk to me, they can talk to the country representative officer, or even the MUIS heads. So if they can't solve the problem, they would direct them to and give they keep the contacts of those people, so this student can go and talk to them and solve the issue. I believe this will be very important in solving issues efficiently and in a timely manner, because then if you have to go to a country representative, or if you send a DM to an Instagram page, then it could take time to be replied, right? Like you wouldn't expect them to reply at once. That's not something realistic. So this would help the students be more engaged and also their voices to be heard during MUIS. So yeah. Uh, Also, I would like to ask on your conflict resolve uh, idea. So, how would you plan to resolve any conflict that comes in between interdepartment? Like, so for example, let's say so next Friday, the CRO department is holding an event, and also the MUIS engagement department also wants to hold an event on the same day, but they didn't know that the CRO department was holding an event on that day. So how would you tackle in a situation like that?
All right. So for that, I would propose two solutions. Firstly, I would try to make plans during the first of the semester so that everybody knows like which date they're supposed to hold an event and it doesn't clash with overlap any other events. And second of all, it is if it is to arise, I would try to understand both of their parties, and if one of the parties can compromise and per se they can hold it in a different week, then I would take that into account and try to resolve it in a friendly and civil manner.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. And I had one last question for you. So, in your election guide, you stated that you want to elect a representative from each of MUIS's department to act as the secretary who would be tracking time and keeping reports. We would already be having subcommittee members for our department. And so, how would you differentiate between our own subcommittee members and elect someone else from a different department to act as a secretary?
Okay, so for the record, I I don't think I said electing a new person for this. I in my speech also earlier I said it's a proposal of appointing a person from the subcommittee by each head to keep track of documentation and communication of the department. So it will be the same subcommittees, and it will be a person who the MUIS heads or any department heads would want, and they would just keep track of all this communication and documentation. I believe in that way someone is accountable. So let's say realistically, if you're the head of when you're the head of a department, you don't necessarily do have time for writing reports on events, because that would also would like decline your productivity on what you have to do, right? So this would ease the burden on the heads, and also would help me keep track of all the documentation and also the whole of MUIS. So yeah.
I believe that that is the job of the secretary subcommittee members to attend meetings and keep a track. So I do not agree with the statement that you have to choose someone from a different department to do this job because that would not serve the purpose of that department.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and thank you for saying that. But I believe if secretary department as and all the subcommittees come into come into each meeting and try to take notes of all those events, then that's just invasion of privacy of that department. I believe if I'm a head of a department, I wouldn't want someone else from another department to come and keep track of it. So I believe this way it is interdepartmental, and that also would lessen all the conflicts that happens, because there's no outsiders in that, and also it would help engage all the departments together, you know.
All right. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
answer.
I don't have any further questions. That's right.
Okay. Thank you guys. That was our 10 minutes of cross examination between the candidates. And I must say that you guys did a good job keeping it respectful and also making it productive session. So, now moving on from the cross examination period between candidates, it is time for me to call on to our current office bearer for MUISS Secretary, Sharon Zhou. Miss Sharon, you may take it off.
All right, thank you, Sean. So let's start with a general question. Um, why, considering the Secretary Department involved in a lot of administrative and recurring tasks, which might be boring for certain people, why are you interested in running as MUISS Secretary specifically?
Should I answer first?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay. So, having worked with MUISS previously, I have a general idea of how things work internally. I believe I possess the organizational and communicational skills expected from a secretary, as during group projects or before a school event, I would try to initiate teamwork and encourage my peers to communicate and contribute more by designating tasks and reminding them of their tasks.
Uh, that's a valid question, Sharon. So I would say my experience of prior being a secretary of two different organizations. That's the main reason I applied for this position to be a candidate, because that gives me more experience and also more familiarity of what a secretary would do. And also I know it's a boring task. It's just keeping documentation, meeting minutes, but also it is a bridge between the international students and also MUIS, because the secretary department is the method of communication. It's the heart of communication. So I believe it's also kind of indirectly giving a voice to be heard. So that's why I chose to apply to secretary.
All right. Do you think the MUIS Constitution incorporated all the necessary information? Please elaborate on any actions or improvements you will take in the future to justify your statement.
Should I go first? Okay, I do believe that the MUIS Constitution does provide a very good outline of what is expected from us. But I would ask for an update for the MUSA Constitution because, as stated in the MUSA Handbook, MUIS general meetings are to be held at least 6 times in a single term, excluding the annual general meeting. Whereas in the MUSA Constitution, it is mentioned that MUIS general meetings are to be held 5 times in a term, excluding the annual general meeting, which indicates that the Constitution is not up to date with the handbook. So I would request for an update.
Uh, I believe the handbook gives a basic outline on what the secretary would do or what any of the heads would do. But thing is, you don't have to stick to a constitution, right? I mean, you have to stick to a constitution in basic laws, but also you can improve on how you attempt to apply those things. Like, let's say it says the minimum of 5 meetings excluding the general meeting, which means minimum of 6 meetings, but you can hold more meetings, right? So I would say the constitution is not the problem. It's just applying what it is written in there and how you interpret it and how you apply it. So yeah.
All right. So, next question. As you will be working with your friends in the MUIS department, what are your course of actions to ensure conflicts of interest or issues arising within the MUIS office bearers are addressed in an unbiased manner? How do you ensure they are comfortable in expressing themselves to avoid misunderstanding?
I can go first if you want. Okay, so I believe there can be conflicts. This is, I believe, mainly due to miscommunication and misunderstanding. So the first thing I would do is hold a meeting with those heads or any person who has the problem with, and also to listen to each of their sides of the story with both of them together. Because if I talk to one person and talk to the other person, it could be two different sides of the story, and I would want all of them to be in one place, and I would listen to all their problems, and I would suggest solutions, and also I would give them a chance to discuss within them by themselves, and also to solve that issue by themselves first. And if that can't be handled, then I would give a solution. And also, if I can't solve the solution, I can't solve the problem, then I would go to MUISS heads, and we all can have a emergency meeting and also discuss on this matter and solve the issue.
For me, when there is a conflict of interest arising, it is very common to happen because office bearers tend to share the same vision, but they might have different methods to achieve that vision. So if a conflict does arise, I would try to understand from both the parties as to why it arose and what their problem is, and I would try to remain unbiased and objective at all times. Thank you.
But how do you ensure, that's the question, how do you ensure the issues are addressed in an unbiased manner?
Okay, I would, as I have mentioned, that try to listen to both the parties and try to understand. And I would try to hold a meeting for both of them where they could try to resolve it by talking to each other and coming up with solutions. And if it is still not very fruitful, I would pass it on to the MUISS heads to deal with it.
Let's jump to the next question. How will you minimize the frictions created due to different working style of each office bearer within your department?
Should I go first? Okay. I understand that there's going to be different ways how each department works. I would try to firstly implement a common outlook of how each department should be working so that everyone can have a common ground. But if that is not the case, as long as they are getting meeting their deadlines and giving me their progress reports, it should be fine.
So I would say that's where my appointment of a person to uh, take over communication and documentation part of the department comes in. So I think this way, even if there are different ways of handling the department, I wouldn't have to go into a department and say, okay, you do this, you do that, because they are heads of the each department. So I will first help that person who is appointed to solve if there are any issues to solve the issue. But I wouldn't be the person going in directly solving the issue. I would help those people who are appointed. And also that person is supposed to send a weekly summary of each department at the end of each week. So this way the communication is also done, and also all of the departments are aware of what is happening in each department during each week. And also it would help in reducing those conflicts that arise due to different ways of work ethics.
Okay. So assuming you are elected next year, hence an offline semester is highly likely to happen. How do you contribute? How do you plan to contribute to the election commission in executing the on-campus election process?
Uh,
For the,
oh, no, you can go. It's fine.
it's fair, you can go first.
Okay. So I believe it's the general secretary mainly holds the by-election for the missing positions, and also I'm responsible to hold by-elections for MUIS. And if when it is on campus, anyway, the nomination process we will be online, because there will be posts and people will apply. But the only difference you can make for a physical is uh, actually there won't be any differences, because the debate is not happening for by-elections. So I think I just help in a way to have the send out the know your candidates posts, and also like help out with the nomination process and look through the nominations and help out on selecting selecting candidates. So yeah.
All right. For my part, I would try to market that the elections are happening for MOIS and MUSA as a whole, because I feel like it doesn't have quite the reach as we would want it to, and a lot of people are still unfamiliar about it. So I would try to promote the elections more through posters on campus, also through our Instagram posts, so that more people can apply, and try to gather more ideas and creativity.
All right. So, in the view as a MUISS Secretary, additional responsibilities are present. How will you manage your academics, MUISS social life, or other commitments that you have?
Aisha, you can go first if you.
All right. I do understand that being a university student is very difficult for us on its own, and managing the secretary role is going to be an addition to it. So, what I would do is plan it out like beforehand. So, I would do that through the usage of Google Calendars for the whole team, as well as Apple Calendars for self reminders, so that it doesn't overlap with my assignments and other works that needs to be submitted.
So I believe Secretary Department has most of the work through my experience. And with all those documentation, I would say I would manage my personal life differently and work life differently, as a MUIS secretary differently. So as a person, I try to always finish my assignments early, so there's no overlapping, and also the work wouldn't get emergency work of other extracurriculars don't come in way. So basically, just time management, and also uh, make sure that my priorities are right, because the when you do something extracurriculars or studying, you have to put your priorities first, and obviously studying comes first. So I would try to not have any laying work out there if any emergency situation arises of any extracurricular activities, or so yeah.
All right. So, next, I'm going to ask one question for each of you. Mm, let's start with Mahasan. So, in your debate, you stated that you will implement a Google Calendar to increase transparency within the MUIS department. How do you ensure the OBs can provide the exact event dates beforehand? How do you ensure they will plan everything? And how do you encourage all the office bearers to maximize this facility despite you already preparing it?
Okay, so this Google Calendar will be accessed by all of MUIS OBs and also subcommittees. So the thing is, at the start of each year, we will have events planned for the year, right? That's how the budget proposal is done, and that's how budget proposal has to be submitted to the administration during what you are going to be used during the year. So the basic outline of the events will be planned at the beginning of the year. But so those events could be put in the Google Calendar. But any events that come after that, I at least suggest that the MUIS heads and the department heads make sure that they at least upload the event date 2 weeks prior. It's just the event date. You don't have to put the whole planning, just the event date. If they're even having an idea of doing an event on this day, so let's say there are two events that the two departments have two events on the same day for some reason. So that way, if we just put the event, we can talk to them, discuss with them, and see how we can work around that. And this will improve communication and also reduce conflict, because everyone will know what is happening. And if you just go to the calendar, there are all the events, and also this way you can improve attendance, because everyone knows beforehand what's happening. So next week, For example, if CRO is having one word or any event that MUISS is having, then the subcommittees and all the OBs will know that this is happening on this day. And so, yeah, that's how I try to implement.
All right. So next, let's go with Aisha. I'm just curious, how do you plan to make MUISS more engageable and momentous as a secretary? And I think you elaborated during your deep speech. You mentioned you will create a interdepartmental meetings.
Mhm.
And how does that differ between a regular meeting?
It differs between a regular meeting in the sense that we would also have officers from MUSA as well, so that we could be have a more cooperative communication with them, and they would also have event details of what is to come from MUISS, and in that way we could also plan out our budget beforehand and match everyone's dates. And also to make MUISS more engageable, I would also want the subcommittee members of each department to be more contributing by allowing them to vote their opinions on Telegram and just like directly message them about events instead of letting their departmental heads know, and that is how they get the message.
All right. So last question. Mm, One of the secretary's role is to oversee, assist, and facilitate an effective and efficient workflow within the whole department of MUISS. What steps will you take to minimize these efficiencies? This applies to both of you.
So going back to my first point, proposing an appointment of a person from each department subcommittee, I would always be on the loop because every week the summary of the department will be given to me and also to the whole of MUISS. So this way, I think the communication is done, and also this way I can ensure that everyone is doing their job. So let's say I take reports at the end of the each month from the heads. Let's be real, the heads won't do it, it'll be the subcommittees who do it and heads put their signature. So through this process, I just let the subcommittees take on the experience, allowing them to be prepared if they are even thinking of being, even if they can use it in the workplace, or even if they are can being a candidate for the MUIS division itself. So also this gives more encouragement to subcommittees, and also it'll be very valid because if you have to give a summary each week, you have to do some work. You can't just say, okay, end of the week we didn't do anything, done. So it ensures that the responsibilities are done by the heads, and also the responsibilities of uh, and also it will be communicated throughout the whole of MUIS, so everyone knows. Yeah.
Sharon, I'm really sorry. Could you please repeat your question? I couldn't hear it.
Sure, no problem. So, one of the secretary's role is to oversee, assist, and facilitate an effective and efficient workflow within the whole department of MUISS. What steps will you take to minimize these inefficiencies?
I would first of all email them regularly about their jobs and tasks and gather updates from them so that I'm up to date as to how each department is functioning. And secondly, I would also work very closely with the OBs, office bearers of each department, so in order to get more progress reports and be up to date so that it reduces the inefficiency in communication.
All right, I think that's all for my question. I'll pass the floor to Sean.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for your wonderful questions and definitely for taking the time out of your day to come and question our candidate today. Now, now that we are done with the Q&A from the office bearer, we can move on to the Q&A by the audience. And I am very happy to see that there are many questions that we have such a bloodthirsty audience today. So without further ado, let's start with one from Rush One. This one is for Mahasan. Mahasan, In your manifesto, you spoke about implementing secretaries in all departments of MUISS. However, as per the MUSA Handbook Maintaining Communication and a record of all departments is a responsibility of the MUISS Secretary. Furthermore, producing documentation is a job of the office bearers as well because they have a better understanding of the role. Furthermore, they produce the business reports from MSC as well. It is not that it is an invasion of privacy if we had subcoms attend the meeting. If every department had a secretary, it would lessen the job scope of the secretary and also the head of departments themselves and adds more channels of communication. How will this benefit MUIS? So to summarize the question, Rashwan is asking you, Mahasan, based on your manifesto of adding secretaries to every department, because job note keeping is the job scope of secretaries and head of departments, this reduces their job scope as well as adds more communication channels to maintain. So how does this benefit MUIS?
Okay, so adding on more communication channels, I believe also it's going to be one of the subcommittees that's going to hold this responsibility of documentation. It's not going to be in an additional position with an additional person in it. So anyway, the department heads anyway have to send their reports at the end of the month to me. So I report them and I send it. I use it on MSC meetings. But this way, uh, it will give more engagement towards subcoms to increase their experiences and also be more engaged with what the department does. And also this would definitely lessen the burden of the each head, not the secretary. I anyway have to get those reports and report it myself. So it's just a way of maintaining and ensuring that the work is done properly. And also this way the subcommittee person who is appointed can work with the department head, gain experience, and in the future, if they decide to run for elections as MUIS head or MUIS secretary or whatever, they have the needed experience, so we don't have to start from the beginning. So yeah, and this would also ensure that MUIS also that one of the responsibilities of this person is to give a summary of all what's happening under the department each week. This would also help me ensure that the work is properly done on each department, and also gives a vision to all of MUIS on what is happening inside of MUIS. Because okay, let's say if we use our subcoms, my subcoms, the secretary subcoms in each meeting, then yeah, they will know what happens and they will report it and they will report it to me. But I'm going to be the only person who knows. This way everyone knows, and this creates a transparency among ways, which will reduce conflicts, and also it will help a lot in communication and working together. So yeah.
Thank you, Mahasan, for clarifying on your manifesto. Let's move on to the next question, this time from Ayush Nair. And this time, this question is directed to you, Ayesha. You spoke about that you will be using Zoom for planning process. Don't you think it will be easier for a face-to-face meeting for any event planning process?
Thank you, Ayush, for your
Uh,
question.
Sorry, the question is not finished yet. To take place as generation of ideas will be easier if the meeting happens face to face. Basically, Ayush is asking you if you agree that a generation of ideas will be easier if the meeting happens face to face rather than online.
All right. Thank you, Ayush, for your question. Yes, it is much easier to have face to face questions, but we also have to keep it in mind that not everyone's schedule matches with everyone. So everyone has a lot of deadlines, classes, and assignments to catch up on, and it's not possible to be on campus for a face to face meeting all the time. So it is convenient for especially office bearers to have a Zoom meeting where it's very convenient to talk it out and report ideas and their progress. Of course, we will have face to face meetings, but it won't be strictly limited to face meetings because the pandemic has changed how we communicate with each other, and Zoom meetings do prove to be quite efficient. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Next, let's move on from Ayush question to Kirara Otawara. Alithia. All right. Again, directed towards you, Ayesha. Kirara asks, Hi, Ayesha. How effective would communication be within the department if committees are not able to adapt quickly enough to the various channels?
Thank you for your question, Karara. I believe that the committee members already are very familiar with Telegram, and WhatsApp is the primary channel they use to communicate with with their teammates and for group assignments. So I do believe everyone is quite familiar with these two platforms. And if it is not the case, I would convey the messages. I'm sure it's an exceptional case, so I would convey the messages via email, their Monash email, so that they are up to date.
Thank you. Let's move on from Kirara's question to the next question, also by Kirara Otawara. This time she's asking, another question for Ayesha, what are your plans for interdepartmental collaboration?
Okay, my plans for interdepartmental collaboration lies within having close relationships with the MUSA Secretary as well, because in that way we will be able to communicate both because we know what our roles are, and we would be able to communicate events and plannings and also budgeting. And I would also encourage all of the office bearers of MUISS to communicate their ideas with the office bearers of MUSA. In that way, we could gather more ideas, and we are at its core organization, so it would improve our efficiency.
Thank you, Ayesha. Let's move on to the next question as well. Okay, this one is for Mahasan, also from Rashwan. Mahasan, in your manifesto, you included an automated attendance system. However, from what you've described as these systems seem inferior. The system you spoke of is one that would only be applicable offline. Given that MUISS is a small group and keeping attendance in a regular on-campus meeting only takes about 2 to 3 minutes, how would this system benefit MUISS and much rather translate as a benefit for the students?
Thank you, Rashwan, for the question. And yes, this would not help the meetings, because anyway meetings only physical meetings, and in online meetings you can keep track of using Zoom, and that's a more easier way. I understand, but this is mostly for the office hours, and this it helps keep track of who comes to office, and it is uh, and it is also very efficient, and also it can be done because obviously there is a computer in the MUIS office, and you can use this system. And also, if you have to do it manually, then you have to go to the office and see who came, and you have to do all that. But this way the attendance will be kept, and also it will also ensure the office bearers do their 5 hours, because the time will also be recorded, so we know how much time they spend each week, and also it will be very efficient. And this will benefit the students, because have if you have an office bearer during office hours doing their job, then it makes sure that any student who comes to the office will be answered, so it will definitely benefit.
Thank you, Mahasan, for clarifying on your manifesto. Let's move on from that question, also by Rashwan, but this time it's directed towards Ayesha. Given that MUISS already uses the platforms that you mentioned in your manifesto, how will your first manifesto point be implemented differently?
Thank you, Roshwan, for your question. So, previously, since working as a subcommittee member of MOIS, Telegram was only used for announcement purposes, and most of our communication was done through WhatsApp. I would try to shift that more towards Telegram since, as I've mentioned, pinning important messages are very convenient, and WhatsApp tends to have a lot of conversation and a lot of text going on. So in Telegram, you would be able to pin the important information so people joining in later can view it and get an idea of what we were discussing about and what their responsibilities are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ayesha. Let's also move on from Rashwan's question to the next one. This one is from Jamal Ahmad. For Ayesha, In your manifesto, you've spoken about tracking the progress of your subordinates. Given that the committee is such a big community, how do you plan for this to be effective? What specific steps do you intend to take to ensure this?
Okay. Firstly, I would try to, first of all, thank you, Jamal, for your questions. So, firstly, I would try to get a progress report from the office bearers at the end of each month to know how their department is performing. And secondly, for the subcommittee members, I would make Google Forms to get their feedback and how they are, how if they're satisfied with their department or not, and what changes could be brought up in that department. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ayesha. We also have another question for you, also from Jamal Ahmad. He asks, since you are applying for the secretarial position, one of the primary jobs is to uphold the Constitution for all members. How do you plan to put this into motion and ensure adaptability?
Yes. Thank you, Jamal, for your question again. So, firstly, I would have a very good understanding of the Constitution myself if I want my other members to follow it as well. As I've mentioned in my election guide, that I would hold a question and answer kind of. I would make actually Google Forms of question and answers for each department. It won't be like a quiz or anything. It's going to be very basic, and if you have a good understanding of the Constitution, you would be able to like answer it. And this would ensure that all of the office bearers are familiar with the Constitution, and this will allow them to uphold it as well. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ayesha. A next question also for you, also from Jamal Ahmad. Since it's a genuine possibility that members from different parties will form the MUISS 2023 community, how do you plan to coordinate through different ideologies and erratic behaviors?
All right. Thank you again, Jamal, for your question. Yes, it is possible that in MUIS we would have different people from different backgrounds, but at the end of the day, MUIS functions like a family and we do share the same ideologies, so we tend to have the same goal. I would try to remind all of the office bearers of that we do share a common goal, and there is a amicable manner to share our ideologies and come to a common ground.
Thank you, Ayesha. We will move on to the next question, this time by Rashwan. As a follow up question on the first question he asked, Mahasan, just to remind you on what was the first question, Rashwan asked, hold on, let me check. If every department had a secretary, it would lessen the job scope of the secretary and also the HODs themselves and adds more channels of communication, how this will benefit MUIS. So as a follow-up question to your answer previously, he asks, this initiative only involves your subcommittees. With this workload along with their already required responsibilities will make the position hard to maintain. How will you ensure that they do not burn out?
With all due respect, I believe you misunderstood my answer. Uh, I didn't mention that my subcommittees would be keeping track of documentation. It will be each subcommittee in each department. So let's say the CRO department has their subcommittees. So let's say they have 3 people in the subcommittee. So one person will be responsible for documentation and keeping minutes. So there will be no burnouts for the secretary subcom. So, and also from this, having each department subcommittees take over the responsibility, it also gives them a more understanding of their department, and also it gives an ease of burden to the heads, which will make them more productive because then they can focus on new ideas, new events, and more engagement of students. So yeah.
Thank you, Mahasan. Let's also move on to the next question. This one is also from Jamal Ahmad. He asks, for Ayesha, what is the specific process of tracking these progress reports that you continually stress upon?
All right. To track the progress reports, I would definitely remind all of the office bearers that it is their responsibility to give me a progress report at the end of each month. So I would try to send them emails and try to even reach them out on different social media platforms, to not different social media platforms, mainly Telegram and WhatsApp, where we would be having these conversations. And just to give them a friendly reminder that it is due and it is their job to provide me a progress report.
Thank you, Ayesha. Let's also ask the next question. This one is from Rashwan. Oh, follow up to my first question. How will you ensure your subcoms are not burnt out if you have them play? Okay, this question has been asked already, Alethea. I think we can move on from to the next one as well. Okay, this one is from Raj Kamal. He asks, Hey Ayesha, given that there are subcoms recruited for each year, how will you resolve the lacking work effort under your position as well as prioritizing the vision and mission of MUISS as a whole?
Thank you, Raj, for your question. As per the lacking of work effort under my position, I would try to ensure that all of these subcommittee members, as well as the office bearers, are doing their jobs efficiently by reminding them of their deadlines and their tasks and constantly monitoring how they're turning in their reports. And secondly, I did mention that I was going to do a feedback form for all of the subcommittee members to know if their department heads are informing them about their responsibilities and events, which would help them feel more included and a part of MUISS. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ayesha. Let's also move on to the next question. Okay, so this one is also from Hassan from Rashwan. Follow up on the second question answer in regards to the attendance. With regards to the pandemic, we know that work does not only happen in the office. You yourself have admitted that this is an inefficient system, so why would you use it then?
It's not an inefficient system when it comes to office hours. Also, the pandemic is going into the endemic phase, but although we can't say that we can hold physical meetings and events all the time, but maybe the meetings will be online, which but the issue is you can't do office hours online, right? You can't do office hours during a Zoom. Let's say then you will have to go into a Zoom meeting and then have the people come into your Zoom meetings for your problems, but you will have to be present at the office. So I'm proposing this idea mainly towards office hours to maintain the office hours and keep track of attendance in office hours. And this will be very efficient and also beneficial. So I believe uh, yeah, it is an inefficient system for online. You can that's not but that's not the point. The whole point of this attendance system was for office hours. So yeah.
Thank you, Mahasan. Let's also go on to the next question. This time, I believe that it is regarding your follow up on the second question. Another follow up. In that case, how is this initiative new? Because office bearers already appoint their subcoms with these particular responsibilities to an extent.
Okay, so as you mentioned, it is not new. The subcoms are supposed to. You're saying that subcoms are doing this. So who signs the report at the end of each report? It's gonna be the heads, right? This way, if I know who the respective subcommittee member who is doing the documentation and giving the summary, this way the office, the let's say the OBs, they can't send the summary of the department every week. They have more work to do. So the subcommittee will make it more efficient and also very transparent. And the next thing is it will also give a spotlight to the subcoms so they feel appreciated, because I have been in positions where sometimes I do all the work for a head and then they would take all the credit for doing this. But this way everyone feels appreciated, everyone is the same, and everyone is treated equally, and also it's more transparent. So yeah.
Thank you, Mahasan. I think we have time for one last question, this time from Jamal Ahmad, and this time also directed towards Ayesha. Ayesha, following up on the progress report, how do you plan to tackle the issue if you are not provided these progress reports timely? What is the process of implementing them and following up?
Thank you, Jamal, for your question. As for the progress reports, all of the office bearers do have to keep in mind that yes, you have to provide progress reports of your department at the end of each month. If it is not provided, so I would accept apology letters of the for their absence of progress reports up to 10 days before it is due. And if they're not providing me with an appropriate apology letter, they have to be accountable as to why they have not provided that to me. I would also, on the other hand, try to remind them, give them a deadline, and assign them with tasks, and so that I can keep them in a communicational flow. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ayesha. And with that last question, I think we can put an end to our Q&A by the students. I apologize if we did not get to your question. We do have reasons for doing so. Perhaps you have asked a few other questions as well, or perhaps your question has already been answered. But in the event that you still want to ask your candidates these questions, you are more than welcome to approach them yourself. Now, we are slightly over time, but we will have our closing statement. This time, we will start our closing statement with Mahasan's first. Mahasan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Alithia, for hosting the debate. And also, thank you for all the questions from especially Rashwan. And so, yeah, I would say the most important thing in this election is to vote, and everyone has to exercise their right to vote. And also, this way, the students can decide who to get into power and who will work for them. So, I won't say vote for me because it's their decision, it's your decision. And the thing is, if I get elected, I would also try to implement not just my manifesto but also Ayesha's manifesto if there are any interesting ideas. And also similarly, I would expect Ayesha to implement my ideas if they are good, if she thinks they are good. And so this way we can ensure that MUIS is becoming better, and we can ensure that we work for the people and we are doing this for international students. It's not for ourselves. And also, again, it's your right to vote, so please take that right and use it. So thank you for everyone for listening, and thank you, Ayesha, for the debate, and also thank you, Sean and Aditya, again.
Thank you, Mahasan, for your very sincere closing statement. Aisha, it is now your turn to close us off.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's session, and especially to the OBs and ROs for your time, Sean, Alethea, and Sharon. Along with complying with MUSA's constitution and maintaining efficient communication, resolving conflicts, and encouraging interdepartmental collaboration, I believe I would be able to maintain effective communication among MUISS departments and all international students. And thank you, Mahasan, for the debate.
Thank you guys for the debates, especially thank you for keeping it civil and diplomatic. I'm really grateful for the two of you, especially Sharon Zoe, and towards the audience. Thank you everyone who has participated in this debate, and thank you for tuning in. This was our debate for the MUISS Secretarial position with Ayesha Suhaima Rab from Ignavitus and Mahasan Wirasinghe from Lideransa. Our current OB was Sharon Zoe contesting the positions, and our next debate will be at 4:15 for MUISS Treasurers with Rohan Diaz from Ignavitus and Sania Malik from Lideransia. We have a few platforms for any election updates, including our Discord server, our MUSA Instagram, our MUSA website, and our election guide, which has been posted recently. Do check them out for any more updates regarding the election and for our candidates' manifestos. Thank you for tuning in.